Hello and welcome to Ripoff Brtain, the programme that investigates your consumer complaints and battles on your behalf to get the answers that you've been fighting for. Throughout the series, we're shining a light on the companies that you've told us about that have left you feeling shortchanged, both big and small organisations. And today, well, some of the companies that you've contacted us about are very big indeed. Now, for many of us, whether it's at work or at home, the internet has become an essential part of everyday life. In fact, 19 million households are now online. But exactly how fast your internet connection will be still, I'm afraid, very much depends on which part of the country you live in. Now, in rural areas especially, trying to get online can be frustratingly slow. Martin and Diane Brtain are amongst the people angry about that. They don't like the fact that they're paying the same as people who enjoy faster speeds. And they also reckon that their slow internet connection is actually damaging their business.
2 years ago, Martin and Diane Brtain swapped this for this.
We're both workaholics and we were like ships that pass in the night, and I was an IT project manager and quite often meant I would do a 48-hour stint. And I said to Martin that, we need to find something else because otherwise we'll cark at our desks and the tax man will get all our money. And we didn't want that. So we started to look around for something else that we could do.
And here is that something. A holiday cottage business tucked away in a beautiful corner of Devon. But there's a downside to living in such a remote area. The speed of their broadband internet connection, which is very slow indeed.
They've got downloadable lessons now, which they haven't had before.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good, but it takes so long to download them and for them to play that it's virtually useless. There we go, look. See, go slow. The most that we've ever got is 1 meg, 1.1 I think. 1.2 at an absolute push, but that's when I'm using it at 6:30 in the morning and there's no other interference on the line, nobody else using it.
Martin and Diane don't just need a faster connection for fun. They need it for their holiday cottage business so that they can take bookings online.
We'd like to be able to run the business ourselves, but we can't because we have to rely on the booking agent to get the customers in. If I can have my own website and I can take my own bookings, I need to be able to take payments via the internet. I can't do any of that with this kind of broadband speed.
The problem is that broadband is still a postcode lottery. If you live in a big city, chances are that you'll have a fast connection. In rural areas, where the infrastructure hasn't been upgraded, it's likely to be much slower. And though Martin and Diane's guests come to get away from it all, like the rest of us, they've learnt to expect fast internet access wherever they are.
They may be getting 5 or 6 meg broadband where they are, and they're expecting be able to have a very similar response when they come away. Unfortunately, you have to tell them it's very disappointing. I'm sorry, this is all we can get.
And what's especially galling for the couple is that they still have to pay the same amount to BT as everyone else. That's £19 a month for advertised speeds of up to 20 megabits. They knew they'd never achieve the highest speeds living here, but hadn't imagined it would be as slow and unpredictable as it is, or that it would have such an impact.
I don't think we thought, having lived in London and in major towns, that to have such a slow broadband connection was something that we needed to take into consideration. I don't think we believed that it wasn't a situation that there wasn't a solution to.
The couple say the reason BT have given them for the slow connection is that they're a long way from the exchange and the system uses the original copper wiring. And it's not like they can switch to another provider.
Because we have copper wire and there is no fibre optics, some companies won't entertain us at all. Other companies will offer us a service but with no better speed, but costing us much more money, almost triple what we're paying now. And I can't afford that.
Michael Phillips is the broadband expert for the price comparison site Consumer Choices.
We've ended up in a situation where rural people have poor broadband speeds because there's never been the investment framework to support commercial organisations. Very few people live in rural communities, so there's never been the incentive for private companies to make the investment to bring those areas up to speed. Broadband is now one of life's essentials. It's like the fourth utility, so not having a useful broadband connection can be a massive inconvenience on people's lives. But that is magnified by an enormous extent for businesses. We are a technology economy, we're a service economy, so it's almost impossible to operate if you don't have a fast broadband connection.
And that's something that the industry regulator Ofcom has recognised. It's ruled that BT should cut what it charges to other suppliers who use its network in rural areas. It remains to be seen if this is going to bring more choice to people like Martin and Diane, but in the meantime, they know what they'd like to see.
If you're providing a service that's vastly inferior than someone in the middle of London can get to people, then you have to charge less. And until Ofcom or someone has the power to force British Telecom to do that, there will be no movement from where we are.
BT told Ripoff Brtain that their policy has always been to give customers an accurate prediction of the speed they can expect before they sign up. And they say that their pricing is based on other factors than just speed, including usage limits and security features. They've confirmed that Martin and Diane currently receive the maximum speed possible for their area. But there is another glimmer of hope on the horizon. The government has invested £530 million to increase broadband speed. Martin and Diane's area is set for improvements next summer. The couple hope that that's not too late for them to realise their dreams and make a success of their business.
I'm incredibly frustrated by it. I can't grow my business because I can't offer the services to my customers and my guests that they feel and I feel they should have. I just can't grow my business.
Now, earlier in the programme, we met Martin and Diane, who were having their patience really tested by slow internet speeds. Well, Michael McHugh has contacted us with a similar problem. He lives in a small village in the northeast of England and relies very heavily on the internet to keep him in touch with the rest of the world. But the time it takes him to get online is driving him mad.
In the village of Medhamsley lives a man named Mike McHugh. Mike's village has just 300 houses, and the nearest big city, Durham, is 10 miles away, which, most of the time, is just the way Mike likes it.
I prefer living in a rural area because it's quiet and there's no rush. You've got all the time in the world, even more so now I'm retired. But I lived in town, didn't like it.
Because Mike and his wife have health problems, they don't venture out of the house a lot.
The wife being an invalid, she can't get about much. I get very breathless if I try and do anything. Walking up to the shop to get the paper, when I walk up to the shop, I've got to stand there for a couple of minutes getting my breath back before I go in the shop.
Mike's health problems don't stop him leading a full life, and these days the retired bus driver uses the internet as his window on the world.
I think the internet is a marvellous thing. It helps to keep in contact with people. I'm waiting at the moment to be able to pass on news to a lot of my relatives that I've become a great-granddad again. Shopping, I find I can get things that I can't normally get locally, such as an old-fashioned shaving stick. I can get that on the internet. I would like to watch films on the internet when the wife is down here watching the soaps.
But there's a major snag whenever Mike goes online. Like Martin and Diane, whom we met earlier, Mike gets very frustrated at how slow his internet connection is. He pays £17 a month for broadband with BT on a package that promises speeds of up to 20 megabits a second. But Mike says his connection falls far short of that figure.
The trouble with my internet is that it is that slow, I cannot watch a lot of the video ones. And of course it keeps on stopping and you just give up. You watch a couple of seconds and then it's blank for a while, then you watch another couple of seconds.
So exactly how fast or slow is Mike's broadband?
This is a speed test that I did earlier. It says the download speed is just under half a megabit on a 20 megabit line.
Although that was 40 times slower than the most he could apparently hope for, the website told Mike that speed was normal for his area. In fact, anything between 0.04 megabits and 0.5 megabits is classed as acceptable where he lives. And when he complained to BT, they pointed out that the terms and conditions did say he would only get up to 20 megabits.
I felt cheated. That they couldn't give me the speed that I wanted. They say one thing and then they give you another, and they say, but it says on the small print. But you go onto the BT help desk, as they call it, you check the speed through them, and it says this is acceptable.
Unlike Martin and Diane in Devon, Mike is unlikely to benefit from the government's £530 million pledge to improve broadband speeds. His area is too far away from the nearest exchange.
The government's planning to ensure that 90% of homes will be able to access a speed of 25 meg across the UK. It does mean, though, that 10% of households are only going to be working to a promise of 2 meg. 2 meg is a significant improvement on nothing, but in terms of being able to watch a video online, it's barely able to support something like BBC iPlayer. So it means that customers in 2015, when things will have moved on, will still be lagging behind.
That's bad news for Mike, who hasn't even got the option of leaving BT and trying another supplier.
I've looked at the other ones and they're all more or less the same. Doesn't care what internet service that's in this area, there's no other internet service can give you much faster speeds. It all comes through BT Telephone Exchange. So what I get, they get.
BT say they have not misled Mike over his speed and would never have promised he could get the full 20 megabits. Their pricing isn't just based on speed, but they have made some adjustments to make his connection a bit faster. He can now receive close to 2 megabits, the fastest possible for his area. Even so, Mike's still left feeling frustrated every time he logs on.
At times, I just feel as though I want to throw the PC out the window and rip my hair out, especially when I'm sat there watching it. Oh, it can be very bad.
Well, BT says that it is committed to expanding its super-fast broadband to 90% of the UK by 2015, and they're testing new technologies to fill in the final 10%. So there is hope for faster connection for Mike, but not straight away. In the meantime, his speed is now slightly up, but as far as he's concerned, until he can get the same fast service as everyone else, he really doesn't see why he should have to pay the same price.
Now today we've been hearing from people who feel they've been slightly left behind by the phone and broadband companies, not able to communicate quite as fast as they'd like to. And that's how things used to be for the residents of the small fishing village of Robin Hood's Bay on the Yorkshire coast. But not anymore. They got so fed up of constantly being told they weren't able to get broadband, they decided to do something about it. This is Robin Hood's Bay on the North Yorkshire coast. For years, this seaside village simply had no access to a broadband internet connection, until the residents took matters into their own hands. A local businessman, Cliff Southcombe, kicked things off after realising his old-school dial-up connection just wasn't coping with his business needs.
People were using the internet more, Businesses were using email, Skype, those sort of things. So if things didn't change quickly, we would be in trouble.
Worried that without broadband his business could suffer, Cliff began looking for a solution.
I spotted that there was a government-run scheme to try and encourage broadband in the region, and a number of businesses were being offered free broadband through a satellite dish for a year. I applied and was fortunate enough to be one of the ones lucky enough to get it.
And he loved having it. But as the end of that free year approached, Cliff was left with two big problems.
One was that at the end of the year, I was going to have to pay, or our business was going to have to pay for that. And even at a cut rate, it was about £260 a month for the broadband. And secondly, it wasn't a good position to be the only one in the village with broadband. That was something that didn't seem fair.
Cliff got together with some of the other locals, and together they came up with the answer. They formed a cooperative company and used the technical know-how of a couple of the residents to build their own broadband network, using a system of boxes and aerials that could bounce the signal from one central point to everyone in the village. Their ramshackle system worked a treat, and when a few years later BT installed an advanced telephone line, they were able to use that to iron out the final few problems.
Of course, another plus point was that having Wi-Fi around the village, we have a lot of visitors coming to Robin Hood's Bay, so they were able to pick up broadband as well. And it provides us a nice little income for the cooperative as well, to help us keep the prices down for those people who live here.
In fact, the cooperative charges users just £5 a month for the service, and it seems to be going from strength to strength. Other broadband services have since become available in the area, but many prefer to stick with the homegrown provider. It's cheap, reliable, always looking to extend and improve.
Obviously, the next thing that we're looking at is the link to the fibre optic cable in Whitby. We need to do that by a relay over the hill at High Normanby.
And any customer service issues can easily be dealt with over a pint at the pub.
Internet just didn't exist before we all got together. Downloading a web page and you could go have a cup of coffee and read the newspaper.
Uploading web pages was terrible business, you know, you hardly ever did it because it took so long.
Having broadband installed, it's a lot easier. You can go to different sites, information sites, even news. You can get up-to-date news instantly. It's there.
What the locals have achieved here is something they think could easily be copied elsewhere. With a bit of determination and know-how from the neighbours, they've shown that even if you have to do it yourself, it is possible to get online, even in the unlikeliest of places.
In today's programme, we've been hearing from people who feel really frustrated with their broadband services and in some cases feel totally ripped off. Well, I've come to Ofcom in London to meet Stuart McIntosh to see if he's got any encouraging solutions. Stuart, I'm very glad you've been able to join us on the programme. Now, obviously, most of us depend on the internet these days for business, for pleasure, and yet we've been looking at the rural side of it, and I think that a lot of the rural customers are really left out in the cold a bit with very slow broadband. So it seems a bit unfair, really, doesn't it?
Well, there are technical constraints on what you can deliver over telecommunications networks, and in most rural locations, people tend to live quite far from the telephone exchange, and that really is a determining factor. I mean, if you live more than, say, 2 or 2.5 miles away from the telephone exchange, you will see a degradation in your service.
Many people have been in touch to say that they go along, they get a package to say, OK, for X number of pounds, you are going to get 20 megabits, and yet there they are with only maybe 2 megabits. So that seems grossly unfair.
Yes, I mean, I can well understand consumers' frustration over that. And it is partly a reflection, unfortunately, of the underlying economics. Communications networks depend on scale, i.e. if you have a very large number of customers, and density, if you have them all together in the one place. You can build a network which is relatively low cost. So that's what large towns and cities are like. If you look at rural locations, however, people do tend to be spread out and they do tend to be smaller in number. And what that unfortunately means is that the average cost of providing the service is actually higher.
I mean, it's a bit like buying a first-class ticket and then having to go steerage. Doesn't work in a way.
It goes back a little bit to the actual cost of upgrading those networks is very, very high. I mean, let me sort of give you some illustrative numbers. To provide higher speed services in most of the urban locations, BT is spending probably somewhere in the region of about £2.5 billion. That is what they've said. Billion, yes. Virgin Media have also spent quite considerable amounts in order to upgrade their networks. To achieve similar speeds in the rural parts of the UK will take multiples of that simply because the costs are quite a bit higher.
So what you're basically saying is you have to bite the bullet and wait until all these improvements happen.
Bite the bullet a little, but hopefully it will not be too long. The other factor is that because government is putting up some really quite significant money, and government, for example, has already committed over £500 million to a programme to promote the development of much higher speed broadband services in rural locations. That will help keep the prices down so that they're more comparable with the prices which apply in urban locations.
Just to sum it all up, what would you say to our viewers who are very frustrated, very angry if they're not getting the service? What hope would you give them for the future?
If you're unhappy with the service you've got today, do not assume that that's the best you can get. There may be some technical things in relation to, you may be able to buy a small £5 filter, for example, which you will find will improve things. Secondly, it could well be that there is something specific to your line, so you need to check into that. The third thing is, make sure that you're up to date with regard to the options that are available to you. There are a number of sites which we have accredited where consumers can go and check the services which are available in their location, check the prices, check the speeds. So if you do all of those things, it may well be that you can actually get a better service at a better price.
And in the long run, be assured that a lot of, well, billions are going into improving the service.
Absolutely, and I think that we can expect within relatively short order, within 2 to 3 years' time, to see a further revolution in the provision of broadband services in the UK.
And if all else fails, I'm going to ring you.
Please do.